conferencing platform will result in the platform being shut down. However, the meeting will continue. Meetings will continue to be broadcast on WACA-TV and live streamed on Facebook. And to participate remotely in this meeting, the agenda has a link that you can click on for your computer. There's also a telephone number to dial in so you can access the meeting that way. We apologize for the somewhat late start than usual. We had some technical difficulties getting up and running, but hopefully we're good to go now. First order of business will be to call the meeting to order. I, John Tripfeatherton, present.
I, Brian Forrestone, present.
I, Dan Mann, present.
I, Ryan Sullivan, am present.
Is Stu here?
Stu, you should be
Stu, you should be a co-host. There you go.
I, Stuart Siegel, am present on Zoom.
Excellent. We're all here. First item on the agenda is a public hearing involving 128 Olive Street. The petition is from Cedric Bacon and Emilie Brodeur requesting a special permit per Mass General Laws, Chapter 40A, Section 9, and Chapter 282, Section 9.3, parenthesis, special permits, close parenthesis, of the Ashland Bylaws. The applicant seeks a special permit to rebuild their shed within the setback line and build a two-car garage with living space above, partially within the front setback line. The property in question is located at 128 Olive Street, Assessors Map 27, Lot 85, and in the Residential A, RA zoning. Parties wishing to be heard on this matter should appear at the time and place indicated above. I see that our applicants are present. How we're going to conduct the hearing this evening was we'll have you make your presentation. We've all had an opportunity to review the documents that you've submitted to the planning office. You'll make your presentation. The board will have an opportunity to ask any questions that we might have. We will then open the matter for public comment if anyone from the public wishes to speak. We have had one written comment that was submitted late this afternoon, favorably, don't worry. And we will go from there. If you would go up to the microphone, whichever, both of you are welcome to make the presentation. I think it's probably for purposes of clarity best if only one person speaks at a time. Alvaro will get you set up and we will go from there.
Okay, so everybody should be hearing me correct. So we're here to present our project, which is at 128 Olive Street. So we bought the house in 2018, and so let me just. So that's the original. That's the house as it stands today, as built in 1953 by Carl Pucci, which, you know, incidentally, has a sign just over there, overlooking this conversation. So the house has been built in 1953 on a lot of about 9,600 square foot. The house is 1,350 square foot by and large. It is built on Zachary Hill, so at the tail end of the hill. If you look at the terrain, it's actually has a line that goes directly across in the middle around here. And then there's a steep part of the terrain down here on the blue part, the grade, and there's about a 13 to 18 degree slope between the road and the entrance here, depending where you go, between 13 and 18. So that part is pretty steep to work. As it's as built today, the it does not meet the current bylaws for total area of the lot, the front setback, the rear setback, and the frontage. So the house essentially does not meet in any way except maybe for the 10-foot on the side. But it also doesn't meet our needs for a couple of reasons. The technical motivations, things that, you know, regardless of who's the owner, would probably be a problem in the short, like mid or long term, is the garage dates back 1953. It cannot accommodate a car. The cars of today, larger and wider. And also has very low ceiling. So whatever is the new cars that are SUVs and things like that cannot fit in the garage. So we use it as a storage space at the moment. We would like to get a proper two-car garage to store the vehicles in the winter. There's a very steep driveway, as you could have seen from the grade of the land and also from the picture. So it is a hazard for us. As soon as it gets icy or snow covered, there was some freezing rain earlier in the winter, and nobody wanted to even venture. Even ourselves had issues trying to get up the hill when we came back over after the weekend. And also the original construction doesn't have insulation in the walls. We've redone most of the room. The last part that needs to be done is the living room and like where the addition would start. So we would have to insulate that one way or another, but you know, we see an opportunity here to do two bird, one stone and kind of do the insulation and replace the windows at the same time as we do the addition. Personal motivation why we want to expand is because we are a family of three. We bought the house as a couple in 2018, and we want to continue to live in Ashland. Our daughter was born here. She's at Pitaway School, and she was at Cedar Street. We're expecting a second child in late June. And at this point, the house at 1,300 square foot is really at capacity. We both work from home. And our starter house is pretty much, you know, I'm working off essentially a closet in the basement at the moment. I have a 50 square foot where I work. So what we're requesting from the Zoning Board of Appeal today is to put essentially we want to redo the shed because the shed has been built in the 1970s. It's now the house of mice and ants, essentially. It's rotten and it's falling apart. We want to make something that would stand, you know, for a longer period of time and be safe to use. But the main ask here is put an addition with a two-car garage that would cut another 9 feet toward the street. So in the setback where we are as of today is at 31, but we are asking to get to 22. And also, you know, we would redo part of the driveway, make the slope toward the street more approachable for people coming and deliveries and everything like that. So that's the main ask. I think we are respecting the rest of the setback, if not from going toward the front. Why we want to go toward the front and not stay toward the back is, as you've seen how the land is on the hill, the front here is not really usable, and there's a lot of traffic on Olive Street, so we don't really feel comfortable having kids play in the front yard. We prefer to have them in the backyard where we have fence, you know, around the pool and around the perimeter so they can play safely, and we don't want to lose that space where kids can play, and moving toward the streets makes more sense for us as it's a least valuable part of the lot compared to the back that is flat in our area, as you can see from the lines here. So we know we are asking to go toward the house, and we wanted to understand, like, is it something that would clash with the neighborhood if we were to go a couple of foot toward the street? So I went with a laser meter and just went from the edge of the street and just measured a couple of houses down the road, figuring out where we would sit relative to that with our addition. As of now, it looks like we would be within the average of what the other buildings are. We would not be sticking out. We are at 44 from the street, where we would get around 35. Most of the street, most of our house are closer or like within that, you know, margin of error of where we would be once the construction is finished. So, and here's a couple of like image showing like what we want to do. Essentially, adding the two-car garage, you can see that we're digging down, so it wouldn't stick up from where the garage is as of today. And we would add a second story. The purpose of that second story is essentially to have the office and the bedroom needed for the expansion of the family. And there's a couple of other views here for perspective to help understand, from the street a little bit more how it would look. And so that's the ask for today from the zoning board. Thank you.
Okay, the letter that you received from our building commissioner dated March 17th, 2024, noted that in the RA zone district, the setback requirements are 40 feet for the front yard, 10 feet for the side lot line, and rear lot line of 30 feet, and that your proposed addition will be within the front lot requirement of 40 feet at 22.9 feet, and that the rear of your house is located within the lot line requirement of 30 feet, making your house a pre-existing non-conforming structure, and thus your need to come before the ZBA for a special permit. Questions from the board? Brian?
I don't have any questions at this time.
Dan?
No questions at this time. Thank you.
Brian?
The only question I had was relative to, and you mentioned this, that one of the reasons you were looking to move the garage forward a little bit was to preserve the backyard. Were there any drainage considerations to that as well, or is it strictly the desire to have more of a play area in the back?
Mostly play area. Having a living area that is on a flat surface is really the main motivation here. Obviously, drainage, we've redone part of the French drain last year on the south side of the house, so the original part of the house. And as part of the addition, we would, install French drain and make sure that everything is, would improve on that front.
Thank you.
Stu, questions?
No, sir.
Okay. I don't think I have any questions either at this point in time. Yes, Dan?
Just real quick, these renderings, are these from a licensed architect, and have you, used like an engineer or anything regarding elevations, and just to make sure that, you're not running into issues with like a retaining wall and all that?
So we're working with Trisha Kendall, which is an architect in town. She's offering the service for the architecture. We have not been through the engineering phase yet of retaining wall and structural, but we rely on her expertise and on that front at least to know that we're within something that is feasible here and not like just pie in the sky type of project.
Okay, thank you.
Oops. Yes, Brian?
I got one more question as well. So this proposed addition, in theory, could be moved back a little bit further towards the deck, but you don't want to go in that direction, is that?
Yes, for two reasons. One is that on the existing building, there's the kitchen and the living room, and there's a window there that is above the sink. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of our starting point where the additions start as well, where from structurally and everything else, that would be a much bigger project to go and redo a kitchen on top of what we tried to do. So we've tried to put things in place there.
Okay, so you want to come into the front setback further in order to avoid?
I mean, the main motivation is to keep like the area there, but where we are drawing that line, why it would not move 6 inches or a foot back is because there's a window there that kind of becomes our starting point for the addition.
Very good, thank you.
And I do have one question. The the new shed is going to be the same size as the shed that's being replaced, is that correct?
Correct.
So it's going to be located in the same spot, which was like 1.8 feet from the side setback?
Correct. The only thing we were planning to do is shift it a little bit. You can see on the drawing that it was crooked relative to the property line, so we just want to put it aligned with the property line during the build.
Anyone else on the board have any further questions before we open the matter for public comment? Okay.
Just one more real quick. The 10.1, or no, I'm sorry, 22 feet setback line for the proposed addition, is that with slope, just what, given that there's elevation here, or do you know if that's the
I am not,
direct distance?
I don't know how surveyors report that, but it's been a few,
Directed, okay.
but I don't know if it, like, I know it's not supposed to be considered as part of the setback, but we do have a good, between the setback line and the street, there's probably like a 12-foot there that, you know, obviously belong to the town, but you can see here, we have a retaining wall that is following the street here, and there's quite a lot of structure. So we're not, when we're at 22, we're not on the street. There's quite a lot of distance between that setback line and the actual street. Even if it were to grow, there would still be distance there before reaching the setback line.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, we will now open the matter up for public comment. If there is anyone here in the audience who wishes to be heard, please line up over here. If there's anybody here remotely that wishes to speak, please raise your hand and Alvaro will raise you in. As I indicated earlier, we did have one written public comment that was submitted this afternoon from Jim F. Creighton, 124 Olive Street, Ashland. And I note on the drawing that Mr. Creighton would be an immediate abutter to the left of 128 Olive Street. It's addressed to the Ashland Zoning Board and to whomever it may concern. Members of the Ashland Zoning Board of Appeal, this letter is to notify that my wife and I have received and reviewed a copy of the documents presented to the Ashland ZBA as part of the appeal to put an addition to the house located at 128 Olive Street. The proposal is agreeable to us and we don't intend to oppose to it. Feel free to reach out to me for any clarification that may be needed on the matter. Yours sincerely, James F. Creighton, and he listed his phone number. Any other public comment? No one in the hall indicating? Anybody online?
No one online.
Okay, then motion to close public comment?
So moved.
And why don't we enter into discussion at this point? I would note, just for our own purposes, that in considering whether to not to grant a special permit, we have to determine that the adverse effects of the proposed use will not outweigh its beneficial impacts to the town or the neighborhood in view of the particular characteristics of the site and of the proposal in relation to that site. And then there are 6 areas that we would need to make findings of. And with respect to the non-conforming structure, we can allow that only if we determine that such reconstruction, extension, alteration, or change shall not be substantially more detrimental than the existing non-conforming structure to the neighborhood. And reconstructed, extended, or structurally changed building is one of the things that we may consider. So that being said, your thoughts on this, Brian?
I don't typically like to make pre-existing non-conforming greater non-conforming, which is what you're asking us to do. If you do have some topographical hardship in that, and it does seem to be pretty commonly going on the street. So I'm confused at this point, and I'm just going to let you guys keep going for now.
I must say, I drove by the neighborhood today. I hadn't been on that section of Olive Street, and it's very clear that the housing on all of that part of Olive Street was built before zoning went into effect, because houses are on the street, back, over on the side lot. It's sort of a mishmash of neighborhoods, all well-maintained, but difficult. Dan?
Yeah, I think what's being proposed is, reasonable, and my only concern would be the elevations and just ensuring that, retaining walls are structurally built and to code and all that. But otherwise, I don't see any issues.
Brian?
I likewise am, very familiar with that road and would agree that there's no straight lines as you go down it. So I think the reason why you need to move it forward makes a lot of sense in terms of not blocking your kitchen, and also, credit the measurements that were done comparing the setbacks of the houses in the neighborhood. So I don't see this as being a structure that will, be furthering a detriment to the neighborhood, or one that outweighs the benefit to the family, obviously, in keeping a family in Ashland.
Stu, your thoughts?
Mr. Chairman, I think it's a reasonable request and I would support it.
Very good, thank you. I would as well. I think it's perfectly appropriate. It'll be a nice addition to the neighborhood. We need to just go over some of the things we have to make findings of, so we know what Alvaro can put in our hearing decision. One of the items is community needs served by the proposal, and I would suggest it's allowing a family to grow and continue to live in Ashland and be part of the Ashland community. Traffic flow and safety, including parking and loading. There'll be a garage, so cars will not obviously be on the street, and I don't think they would add anything additional to traffic than what's already there. Adequacy of utilities and other public services. Doesn't look like there would be any increase, particularly for utilities or the need for public services beyond what's already there. Neighborhood character and social structures. I believe the applicant in his presentation set forth what the neighborhood is like and how the social structures would fit in. Impacts on the natural environment. Little more asphalt, I suppose, on the drive, but other than that, nothing I think of significance. And potential fiscal impact, including impact on town services, tax base, and employment. So there'd be a small time of employment for contractors to build it. Wouldn't seem to be any increase in town services, and there would be an increase in the tax base, so you folks would have to pay more real estate taxes, for which the town of Ashland will thank you, I'm sure. That being said, I think we have an agreement that we will find in favor of the application, Alvaro. Do you have enough to draft a hearing decision?
Yes.
Okay. 3 members vote on the hearing decision. Brian and myself are full members, and we need to be joined by 1 associate member. We generally try to rotate the associate members so that everybody gets a chance. And at the last comprehensive permit that we signed, Ryan and I believe Stu signed the hearing decision. So would you like to be the 3rd member in this?
Sure.
Okay. Then, why don't we continue this? What we have to do is we have to get a draft decision, folks. We then review it at our next meeting, find it in order, and approve it ultimately, and then we'll sign it, and you'll be going forward from there. So, can we have a motion to continue this to the next meeting on April 22nd at 7 p.m.?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Motion second.
I, John Trefethan, vote in favor.
I, Brian Forrestall, vote in favor.
I, Dan May, vote in favor.
I, Ryan Sullivan, vote in favor.
I, Stuart Siegel, vote in favor.
Very good. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, folks. We're all set. Okay, we have our next, why don't we take a 5-minute recess if we can, so allow these folks to leave and for the next hearing, folks to come in and get set up and go from there, if we may. April 8th meeting of the Ashland Zoning Board of Appeals. Moving on to our next item on the agenda, continuance of a public hearing at 1060 Main Street, a 40B comprehensive permit application. The Ashland Zoning Board of Appeals will reopen the public hearing to hear the petition from SLV Ashland LLC requesting a comprehensive permit per Mass General Laws, Chapter 40B, Section 20-23, to allow for the development of 2 multi-family story buildings for 250 apartment units and 337 concealed podium parking spaces. The applicant also proposed to restore and convert the northernmost mill's 7,500 square feet into commercial and retail space, some of it open to the public. The property in question is located at 10-60 Main Street, Assessors Map 14, Lot 128, in the Ashland Overlay Downtown District A and Industrial Base Zoning. We previously have had public meetings on this project on January 7th, February 11th, March 11th, and March 25th of this year. At the conclusion of the last meeting on March 25th, we had indicated that we had anticipated finishing our review on the traffic, which had been the subject of discussion at the previous meetings, and then move on to the civil engineering. At the request of our traffic peer review engineer, he requested that this matter be, that subject be continued until our next meeting on April 22nd, so he could finish his report and have further time to discuss it with the applicant. And I understand the applicant was informed of that yesterday when we had it and there was no objection raised. So that being said, we can move on to civil engineering. Why don't you just, so make sure we're all on the same page?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. For the record, Jeff Engler representing SLV Ashland. Your characterization is correct. It's our understanding that MDM has some lingering issues, and in fairness, we thought it would be a good idea to receive that letter, to have us have a little bit of time. I don't think it's anything significant, but we really want to bring all those outstanding items to closure the next time we are before this board. So I think by April 22nd, we'll be able to do that. We're just starting with civil, and there's a lot to chew on there, so we thought tonight will be dedicated to that, and we look forward to that discussion.
Very good, thank you. With respect to the discussion on the civil issues, our peer review engineer has written 2 reports. His name is Joseph Pesnola from the firm Hancock Associates, and fortunately town council was close by to remind me of his name because for some reason I have a mental block about it. In any event, we thought the best process and what would make most sense, Mr. Pesnola has filed 2 reports, one dated January 28th, 2025. The BOLA engineering team for the applicant has filed a response, and Mr. Pesnola has filed an additional report dated April 1st, 2025, and we thought it probably made the most sense for him to start the presentation on where we stand with the civil engineering aspect of this project. Joe?
Pesnola from Hancock Associates. So our letter dated April 1st goes, it's a running letter. So it is long, it's 22 pages, but that's on purpose. It's to be able to follow the progress of the project and the applicant's responses. So we include our initial comment, we include the response from the applicant that we took from their letter, and then we provided an update. And really what we're trying to do is put things into 3 different categories. The first is that the item is closed and the issues are resolved to our satisfaction. The second would be that items are still open and still need work to be done. And the last would be things that aren't, that could be conditioned for action post-issuance of the comprehensive permit. And ultimately, we want to get to a place where everything's either in Category 1 or Category 3, so we're wrapped up. So I won't go over the entire report. It's safe to say that there are many items that are closed and that have been satisfactorily addressed. But I do want to touch upon several items and just bring them to the board's attention, not so much for the board's action or input, but just as a matter of completing the public record and letting the public know what's happening with regards to the interactions that we've had. We did meet today with a couple of engineers from BOLA just to go over some of our comments in the April 1st letter, and they are readying additional materials and we'll be providing additional responses. So the first thing I want to touch upon is just the waiver list. We had noted that plans are evolving and they're changing, and that waiver list will evolve with it. And they've committed to update that waiver list at some point in the process, an appropriate point in the process, to either eliminate waivers that they no longer need or add waivers that have come to light that they do need. And that's normal in the 40B world. So just want to bring to the attention that it's out there as an action item for the applicant. At some point they'll be comfortable to come forward with that. The next item I wanted to touch upon was was just an update on the raceway. There's an existing raceway that goes underneath the buildings that's proximate to and parallel to Main Street. There was some early reports from DPW that there may be municipal drainage that connects into the raceway and relies on the raceway for that. They did send cameras down into the raceway to kind of see things and figure out whether there was any physical connections, and they didn't see any within that video. We reviewed the video, and we concur that the raceway is blocked off because their proposal is to demolish the raceway, fill it in. Subsequent to that, we know that that CCTV video was circulated to DPW and Conservation, and they reviewed it. And there was subsequent correspondence with Mr. Small and Ms. Solomon from DPW and Conservation, Mr. Small kind of concurs that the raceway was, in what he's seeing, it's blocked and no longer used. But Ms. Solomon did note that there was a report by ORS that speaks to maybe pollutants and sewage leaking into the raceway. So we don't know if that's corroborated, but regardless, we know that this site is going to be watched very carefully because of the ongoing contamination or the contamination issue. So I think it's something that will be addressed as they begin work, demolish the buildings, uncover the raceway, figure out what's there. And I think there can be, what we're suggesting is that a note be added to the plan, that be done, and that DPW and Conservation Commission are notified when they're going to be actively working on the open raceway to understand what it is, and they then can proceed to fill it and stabilize it for construction of the building, because the new building is going to go in on top of that area. So we think, by and large, this item, besides some additional notes to the plan and possibly some future conditions, should be satisfied for now. As far as we just had a comment with regard to the dewatering that will occur on site. We have shallow groundwater, we have contamination. We understand that the site's going to be under the charge of a licensed site professional, LSP, during any soil management on site, and that's really out of the purview of the board. But I think what we've asked the applicant to do is just to, in narrative form, tell us what are the options for dewatering, working with the LSP, just as a matter of information for the board and how that's going to be handled during construction. Regarding snow storage, we think it's they have responded to our comment by adding snow storage areas to the plan, but this is a complicated site, and their drainage system and how they're handling runoff is going to be very, they're going to have to manage snow in a very particular way. So we're asking for a little bit more information on that snow storage, maybe some signage to where, clearly indicates on site for the snowplow operators where not to put snow. That would inhibit or block the drainage from working. And also, we know that when they get to conservation, the Conservation Commission is not going to want them to put snow proximate to the wetlands or over the wall, just to be sensitive to those issues. But we do think that the snow storage that they've provided should be ample for the paved areas that are exposed to snowfall. With regards to the loading and trash provisions for the commercial portion of the project, they have identified an area for both loading and trash in between the building that's going to be retained and the new building. There's an alleyway there. We just think that there needs to be a little bit more detail on the sufficiency of that space. It's a tight space. And also maybe some input from the Board of Health with regards to kind of that alleyway that's going to have the dumpster in it. And is there space for recycling? Is there space for multiple tenants? Many times when you do have a restaurant and other retail users, they don't want to share the dumpster because the restaurant is obviously high use, and it also has some peculiarities to it with regards to having to keep it clean and so forth. And a dry retailer doesn't really want to play in that. So have they really thought out, and is there ample room in that alleyway for all of the commercial portions of this? You are approving the site plan for the comprehensive permit, which includes the commercial components. So much like the planning board, you need to think about kind of those aspects, and is there sufficient space there? So just ask them to provide a little bit more detail and information on the possibility for multiple commercial users. With regard to stormwater, I think that's one of the two big items that's still open. Essentially, this is a challenging site. It's got the AUL components, which will eliminate the ability to put water back into the ground. It's got floodplain, which eliminates the ability to raise the land, which really ties their hands in many ways to many approaches to providing stormwater treatment. They are a redevelopment project, which gives them some liberties with regards to not having to meet today's standards as a redevelopment project. But they have to comply to the maximum extent practicable. And the maximum extent practicable is not clearly defined, and it's really up to this board and ultimately, and also the Conservation Commission in their charge to grapple with, have they done enough? Have they exhausted all possibilities? And so it's my job to inform you as to whether I think they've gone far enough, because that's what you hired me for. So I don't think they have, and we discussed that today, and there are some areas in the back that I think that are headed towards the pipes in the wall and have minimal treatment. And so we thought we talked about some ideas. They're going to go back and see if those ideas could work to be able to provide a higher level of treatment before that water gets discharged out to the surrounding environment. So I think they're close. I think they've done some things that are an improvement over the original design, and we've asked them to do a little bit more, just to be able to give us the comfort level, to give you the comfort level that they are really doing what they can to the extent practicable. There is a question with regards to those pipes in the wall. There are 3 pipes through the wall now, and just so I'm not going to assume the board fully understands everything. You've got the Sudbury River, you've got a wall, and you've got the site. And the wall was put there by the current owner to keep the Sudbury River out of the site. The 100-year floodplain is above the wall. So when the Sudbury River gets to the 100-year floodplain, it comes over the wall. The pipes down through the wall are down at the bottom of the wall. So the bottom of the wall is elevation 80, top of the wall is 85. The pipes are at 80. So the pipes, functioning of the pipes is to drain rainwater that falls on the site. There was also historically a pump on the site proper side to help drain the site when those pipes couldn't handle to keep the water out of the site. They are proposing to maintain the wall and reinforce the wall. So the wall is going to continue to be there. Continue to be there at an elevation of 85. They're going to add another pipe, so there'll be ultimately four pipes through the wall. And they are going to put a storage or drainage storage system on the site in the back for larger storms, and that will be equipped with pumps that will pump it out to actually to the canal that connects to the Sudbury River, where the raceway used to discharge. So we have a concern that those pipes do activate in smaller storms below the 100-year storm, when the river's between 80 and 85, and that water can come into the site. And there's about 13,000 cubic yards of storage volume on the site side of the wall. They're proposing to put tide gates in these four pipes not to allow water to come into the site for nuisance. Now, when they hit the 100-year floodplain, flood elevation, it doesn't matter. The water comes over the wall and fills that volume. And they contend that the volume is still there, and the volume is equal to what it is today, and all is right with the world. My concern is that in those smaller events that don't breach the wall, they're not activating that volume. So where does that water go? Does it go downstream, and does it impact other people within the flood reach, within the floodplain? So I've asked them to look at that in both a macro sense. What is the floodplain? Who is in the floodplain? What are the elevations of the floodplain? Does the river continue to fall away and with some grade and some velocity that it really doesn't matter? Because floodplains can change elevation as they go downstream. But some floodplains are very flat and expansive. So we need them to look at that and say, in those storm events before the wall is breached, is the elimination of the potential for 13,000 cubic yards of water storage on your site that you're going to block off a problem? So that item remains open, and they're going to provide a little bit more study to it. Additionally, with regard to that underground storage and pump system, we're looking for some more details. We're not looking for a design of this system. We're just looking for a little bit more narrative on when that system is activated, how much rainfall activates, gets into that system, and then how is it, what's the timing on the pumping, what's the approximate volume that they're pumping, what happens theoretically in different storm events with regards to that. 100-year storm, we have to all understand, is a foot or a little bit more than a foot over the wall. So the whole lower reach of the site is at elevation 80, and the floodplain's at 86. So there's no pumping the water out during that event. There's 6 feet of water in the back of that site, and that's just reality. But in the larger storms in between your everyday 1-inch thunderstorm and the 100-year event, which is 8-9 inches of rain in a 24-hour period, how do those systems theoretically, are they going to work? Because some of the water is going out the 4 pipes. and some of the water's going into the storage system and getting pumped. So just kind of walk us through how that theoretically works. We're not looking, again, this is a 40B, this is preliminary design information, but we're looking for a little bit more information and their thought process on how that's all going to work. Just to close out on the tide gates on these pipes, we've asked the question, should they really be there? So one of the answers might be no. That we want that ability of the site to flood, because it is a floodplain. As far as just jumping over to the contamination, we understand that the soil movement on the site is going to have to be done under the oversight of an LSP, a licensed site professional. We just want to make sure that that's memorialized, that this board gets or the town gets a copy of that, just so the town staff is aware of what's going on and what the protocols are and so forth. You have no authority over that. The town doesn't have any authority over that. That's a DEP thing. But communication is I think is important, so town staff remains plugged in on that. With regards to the flood storage, we went over that. I think the last item that I had was I guess that was it. Does the board have any questions for me with regards to where we stand and any of that information? I know there's a lot.
Brian, questions?
I guess I don't really understand a lot of what you're talking about, but what is a raceway? Could you explain that?
Oh, I'm sorry. A raceway is a conveyance of water underneath a mill building. They basically diverted water from the river, and it went into a
Don't say raceway.
channel, a big area underground, under the building that carried water at slope so that they could utilize the water, divert the water into the building for use or use it for power or whatever.
It's a concrete.
Stone and, yeah, it's old,
And
granite.
Can you walk in it, or is it?
Yeah, it's huge.
It's huge, that big. Okay. All right. And so right now, when there's a big storm, back there floods?
Behind the building still, yeah.
So it doesn't go into the granite buildings that are there now?
It can,
It can.
yeah. And that's another, oh, that was the last item that I wanted to. Thank you for reminding me. One of the items that we did ask for is kind of a flood management plan. Right now you have industrial users, commercial users back there, and that's one thing. They may have impacts from flooding, but they can also vacate the site. You're putting residents here. They have to live here. And there has to be, and they're going to have to be communicated with in the event of a flood of what to do. And I think this site is uniquely positioned that they're going to be safe. You know, they have access to the front of the site. They are well above the floodplain. They have to be with their residents. But there are things that that are going to happen. One of the things is to get the cars out of the lower level. So a flood management plan is a plan that anticipates a flood event and is administered by the management company of the apartments to notify their residents that they need to do certain things. They need to move the cars out from that back area. Now, they have 2 levels in the parking garage, one at 180 and one at 187. Could they valet park all of the cars up there? Could they get them up onto the street? Could they make an arrangement with, you know, another site in town that's always high and dry that they could relocate to? But they in not only from the standpoint of avoiding damage to the cars, because there's going to be 6 feet of water down there, but also the environmental impacts of putting a flood around a car and having oil and greases and whatnot get into the water. So they should be able to put together a preliminary flood management plan that speaks to, you know, the various types of flooding that can happen back there. There's nuisance flooding that's just going to be problematic, and maybe that's at 6 inches to a foot. There's going to be, you know, the next stage of flooding that's higher, that could start to impact cars. And then if the 100-year flood is coming, then they definitely need. So the early stages of the flood management plan could be voluntary. That, yeah, it's going to be a nuisance, and if you want to go to your car, you're going to get your feet wet. But the highest stage of the flood management plan is going to be mandatory. You need to move the cars, or we're going to bring tow trucks in and move them out. Dumpsters maybe is another piece to that. You know, if they're going to be inundated with flood, maybe there's a call for those to be removed from the site during the flooding event. It's, you know, it's something that has to be done by the management company, and I think they should think about it, and you should see at least a draft of one. The good thing about flooding on the Sudbury, it's somewhat predictable that it's going to happen, and what the levels could be. It doesn't tend to flash flood. If the 100-year flood is coming, they're going to have some time to prepare. So, but we just have to understand that the change in use of the site to residential is going to put people not in danger, but they're going to have to manage it.
Dan?
Yeah, so I think everyone can agree that it's a very challenging site. Would you say for any developer coming in here, are there ways to improve upon the civil engineering and structural aspects, whether it be reduce the size, make other modifications? I guess my question is, you know, where do you see the biggest room for improvement, and how would that look? Again, I understand it's an extremely challenging site, and just, you know, kind of for any developer coming in here.
No, I think I think they've done their homework, and they've put a lot of thought into what is a challenging site, and granted they have liberties with regards to the fact that it's a redevelopment plan, but those liberties are purposely put out there within the regulations to promote redevelopment, to make the situation better. And they are going to make the situation better from an environmental standpoint, and from potentially from a flood management standpoint, because they'll have the ability. Today, if the flood's coming, who knows what's back there, and who knows whether anything could be coordinated to do that. But now you know you're going to have a management company that's going to do it. So I don't think there's anything the fact that they've got 2 levels of parking is advantageous, and they could utilize that. The fact that the site is out, the front of the site is out of the floodplain. I mean, I've seen projects in which the entirety of the building is surrounded by floodwaters, and there's questions as to, can you evacuate people, or do they have to shelter in place? Here, you've got the whole front of the building, which should be high and dry. So that's a really big positive. With regard to the commercial space, that lower level of the commercial space is going to flood, and they're going to have to, whoever rents down there is going to have to just understand that and maybe make precautions and maybe sandbag the doors and do what they can. But it's going to be an insurance thing. It's allowed. You can do that. You can't put residents in the floodplain. You have to elevate them above the floodplain. And all the mechanicals and equipment for that has to be above the floodplain. And that's federal regulation. So they have to do that. So we're asking them to do a little bit more on the stormwater treatment, and we're asking them to study what's happening in those lower flood events between 80 and 85 to hopefully make it better. But I don't see the need for wholesale changes or project reduction. I think they've done a good job to make it work.
Thank you. And then real quick, do you see any risk in not developing this site? And, if it were to, just be vacant for 5 to 10 years, do you see risk in that alone, opposed to making these improvements?
No, I'm always one that promotes redevelopment of these sites, because in the end, it will be better environmentally. I don't think there are any risk for letting it fallow, other than just the blight and the economic impacts on the town's revenue. So.
Thank you.
Ryan?
No questions from me. I appreciate the format you used for these responses. It was very easy to follow. Thank you.
Stu?
I think you're muted, Stu.
I have some general questions for anyone at the table. What is the liability to inform potential residents that they're going to be living on a floodplain? Does the developer do that? Does the town do that?
I don't think there's a responsibility of the town to do that. I think the board could condition that the lease agreements have some notice, just as a matter of, I don't know if it's courtesy, or I don't think there's a legal requirement for somebody renting an apartment to say that.
Yeah, I think that would be in the lease, but I would have to defer to an attorney.
There's no legal requirement for the town, certainly, to notify anybody. And I think it's a precautionary thing for the management company to do. If somebody's going to park a car in a place that's going to get flooded or potentially get flooded, you want to let people know that they have certain responsibilities as part of the flood management plan, right? So I think the lease agreement should refer to the flood management plan, and that's the disclosure.
Anything else, Stu?
I'd like to ask Mr. Pesnola if he has dealt with any other projects that have a similar water condition as this one.
Yes, we have. It's more than you'd think, but it's the nature of development today and the nature of limited land area. So we've been involved in projects that are developed in the floodplain. And in one instance, it was 360 degrees of flooding around the building. And we had to get quite creative to get emergency evacuation fire access to that building. Again, this building's different. But we've dealt with these flood management plans with regards to, coming up with creative ways to move the cars and to notify the residents. So, yes, it is done.
So from your understanding, has that flood management plan been submitted to you for review?
No, that's something that I have requested in my, in our latest letter, and that they owe us.
I see. Thank you.
I don't have any questions at this time, but thank you very much. I will follow what Ryan said. The way in your report you structured it so that what they proposed, what you asked, and where we stand now made it very easy to follow and much appreciated. That being said, we will now turn to the applicant. Let me ask you this. Apparently there was a meeting earlier today with some of your engineers and Joe, and the question comes, they're going to submit perhaps some further documentation. Do you want to make your response now, or do you want to wait for that further interaction between the engineers to happen? I'll leave it up to you, whatever you think is best for you.
Thank you for that option, Mr. Chairman. I think, and I'm joined tonight by Devin Tabor from Lucas Environmental and John Cusich from Bowler, our civil engineer. I was remiss at not introducing them earlier. My parents would be very disappointed with me. I think we'll talk at a very high level. Mr. Piznola and Hancock and Associates are pros. They're very thorough. They've been through this a lot. We really appreciate their thoroughness and diligence. I was not party to the conversation today, but it's my understanding a lot of progress has been made, and now we have some homework assignments to go back and endeavor to. We're going to provide comments to the letter, and we're going to resubmit some of the additional details that have been requested. And John can get up in a second and talk a little bit about some of that. I just wanted to mention a couple things just at a high level. Mr. Piznola has asked for kind of a dewatering approach. Clearly that's going to be important, but in our experience, the dewatering strategies are done very closely with the general contractor involved. And we're very at a preliminary stage here, and we do not have a general contractor. So we can provide a narrative on some of the possibilities of dewatering, but just to set expectations, we're not going to have a specific strategy on how the site is going to be dewatered, because there's different options. It dovetails to other considerations relative to construction. So I just wanted to kind of make that clear, but we can introduce some possibilities. And then relative to the flood management plan, we can provide kind of a draft plan, if you will, but as, I don't know if it was Joe or somebody else, usually that plan is done in close consultation with the management entity. And we don't even have a permit, let alone identified a property manager for this. We have relationships, but what I would like to do is we could submit a representative kind of idea of how it will be handled, but would like the opportunity to be able to refine that once we have the management company, happy to submit it to the board, but we'll give some fodder, if you will, for how we think it will be handled. It's not rocket science, but we just don't want somebody saying, well, this is the plan you submitted back in, May of 2025, and when we're built in 2028 or whatever, we want the opportunity to be able to refine and enhance that. So I just wanted to make that kind of known, mostly for council relative to how that may be reflected in the decision. And then, you know, there were a couple of other things, you know, relative to the trash and recycling and some of those considerations. We'll definitely look at that again. I'd say that's more kind of operational than civil engineering per se. But I don't think there was anything in conclusion that was identified in the letter that we were like either holy crap or this is way out in left field or what's going on. So we just need a little bit more time. I think the iterative process is helping, and what we'll submit later is a response to the letter using the same format. We'll respond to Joe's comments, and we'll have an additional submission with the additional details, and hopefully the outstanding items go from however many there are, a dozen or whatever, to one or two, kind of like how it's worked with traffic. So I'll turn it over to John. He may offer a few more technical responses, and happy to answer any questions.
Mr. Chairman, just to follow up, how Mr. Engler is qualifying the dewatering, yes, just basic approaches. This is just for information for the board to understand the possibilities. And yes, the contractor needs to be involved in that to hone in on it. And then on the flood management plan, yes, it's a very rough draft, but it needs that flexibility of the management company to be able to say, yeah, we can do that. Or
Okay, thank you for clarifying.
Good evening. For the record, John Cusick with Bowler. I'll be very, very brief. Joe did a great job with the explanation, very thorough peer review, and we had a very, very productive, great conversation. We talked about a lot of suggestions, and maybe we can try this or try that. I just wanted to reiterate this unequivocally is a challenging site, as these redevelopments are. And as Joe had said, I'm a big proponent that I do think with challenges is opportunities to make the site better. And I feel confidently, as submitted, the site is better. And I think with some of the changes we're talking about making, it'll be better beyond that. As was discussed, there really wasn't in there, and much of the comments, we have already addressed. There wasn't much in there that I don't feel we can't address and provide some additional information to the board. I won't bore you with those details till we go back and make some of the changes, submit it to your peer reviewer, who will do, again, another thorough review and go through that process. But I feel confident we have a project that is an improvement, and I feel further confident that the changes we're going to make will make it that much better. So unless you have any specific questions for me, really that's all I really wanted to get across at this point.
Members of the board, any questions? Sue, you good? Okay. Thank you. Did you want your other environment? No? Okay. Not doing that tonight. Okay. Let me ask members of the board this. Do you think it would be helpful for the board to take a view of this property, walk around the exterior? We've had a lot of discussion, a lot of engineering presentations and what have you. If you think that would be appropriate, we can, I'm sure, arrange it with the applicant. If you don't think it's going to be necessary to make the decisions we need to make, then we don't need to do it. I had an opportunity to walk around it before things were really filed with the state, so I have some semblance of what the property is, but I don't know if any of the others have had on the board. So your thoughts on that?
I think that's appropriate, but maybe towards the end of the process when, kind of some of the challenges and risks have been identified.
Okay. Brian?
Yeah, I agree with Dan on that. It's probably not necessary yet.
Brian?
I'm very familiar with it, but certainly having an engineer pointing out some of the things that we might not recognize would be helpful.
Stu, thoughts?
I have toured the site, but I would agree with the rest of the members of the board that further down the road, when we get some specifics to look for, it might be helpful.
And why don't we set that aside for the moment and revisit it as we get further along in the process, and if we still think it might be helpful for us in making our decision, then we can coordinate that with the applicant, and it'll be at a time when the weather is warmer, hopefully, so that'll be fine. It'll work out in everybody's best into July. Council is already booking the date for July, so there you go. Okay. There are no further questions from the board. We will open the matter up for, just wait. We'll get to you, not to worry. We are going to open the matter up for public comment. I would ask people to limit their comments to several minutes and to address the issues that we have talked about tonight, not traffic. There'll be an opportunity to talk about traffic at our next meeting, but simply with the civil engineering aspect of things. And again, as we have done in the past, if you do wish to be heard, line up along the wall. If you're on Zoom, raise your hand. We have had a number of submissions that came in since our last meeting that are going to be entered into the record. I'm just going to identify them. I'm not going to read each document because otherwise we'd be here all night. Had an email from Fire Chief Keith Roby dated March 26th of this year. An email from Police Chief Kara Rossi dated March 26th of this year. Another email from Fire Chief Roby dated today, April 8th. A letter or an email from DPW Chief Doug Small dated April 2nd of this year. A letter from, or an email from Julie Pickett dated March 26th of this year. An email from Arthur Johnson dated April 1st of this year. A report from the Design Review Committee dated March 11th of this year. A letter from Connie Mantle, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, and I don't see the date on it, but it was after our last meeting. An email from Pramod, and I do apologize in advance for the pronunciation, Kachandani, dated January 17th of this year. And email from Robert Meyer dated February 8th of this year. And another email from Connie Mantle dated February 10th, 2025. And last but not least, an email or a report, actually, I believe, from the Road Traffic Safety Committee dated January 31st of this year. And all of those will be entered into the record of the hearing. That being said, we have two people lined up, so please step up, identify yourself if you would, and again, 2 to 3 minutes, please.
I just have two short questions. If you're a renter, do you have to announce to your insurance company that you're parking in a floodplain and therefore you have to pay more insurance?
That's a question beyond the scope of this proceeding and what we're going to do.
Okay.
And it's not
I
a
have one
public
more question.
information.
Yep, one more
system.
question, though. You said when it rains, a regular rain, hard rain, does that mean that a renter is going to be walking out to the garage and there's going to be 12 inches of rain and the person at 7 a.m. is going to have
Again,
boots?
that's not a question
That's
that
not-
none of us can answer.
Well,
He
that's-
certainly can't answer. It's a hypothetical question.
No, but he
and
said
it's
there
not
was gonna be
appropriate,
water at
and we're
12
not
inches.
It's an argumentative question. It's
Oh,
not
I'm
going to be
sorry.
allowed.
Oh,
And you didn't identify yourself either.
oh, I'm sorry, Carolyn Bell, Concord
There
Street.
you go.
Sorry.
I know, I recognized you.
Yes,
I just
I
couldn't
know,
remember your
but
name.
I thought he had talked about 12 inches of rain on a regular rainstorm.
But we're not going to go into
No?
what tenants may or may
Okay,
not
sorry.
be able to do. Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Connie Mannell, resident of Ashland for 47 years, Newcastle Road. I've raised my family here. I live in Ashland because of good schools, small-town atmosphere, and open spaces. We all understand the need for more affordable housing, and I believe that my town planning and zoning boards have the expertise and town knowledge to determine what is appropriate housing and its pacing for Ashland. To meet the new MBTA zoning law, I fear that Ashland is
Ms.
doing...
Mantle, I'm going to have to stop you there because this project has nothing to do with the MBTA zoning law. It's totally unrelated to it. We have two submissions from you, very well written, that are in the record, will be read by the board and considered by the board. But the subject that you're talking about is not limited to what I asked you to limit your discussion or questions about, which was the engineering issues that we talked about tonight. It's a long meeting, and we're not going to go down that path.
Can I quote the town manager?
You can just do what you want for the remaining minute of your 3 minutes, but again, we're going to rein you in to what the issues we're talking about tonight. There'll be time to talk about public housing. There'll be time to talk about traffic later on. We have an application for a 40B project, and that's what we're in the middle of dealing with.
The town manager, Michael Herbert, in his newsletter, The Ashland Mills Project, says that it does not harmonize with the existing character of the town, strains our municipal services, and does not address the environmental impacts and infrastructure needs that would typically be addressed through more thoughtful planning.
And there are many of us that probably agree with that, but we have a legal process that we have to follow, and we will go from there, and we will do our very best to do it. But I have yet, frankly, to hear one person in the town of Ashland speak in favor of this project, which doesn't mean that it's going to be denied. It's going to be given the consideration and fairness that it's entitled to under the law, and we will do the very best we can do. But we understand it's not a project that's popular in the town. But that can't be something that we consider.
I wish that we could recognize and follow Ashland's zoning laws.
Well, but Chapter 40B of the state code laws allow developers, applicants, builders to come in and build housing that supersedes certain zoning laws that towns, municipalities have. And that's what the applicant has done. It's what the applicant has every right to do. And we're now involved in the middle of the process of finding out exactly what the proposal is, how it can be improved, and where ultimately we get to at the end when we have to make a decision. That's what we're going to do.
Are you following the example of other towns like Middleborough, who...
Middleborough dealing with the law involving the MBTA, which is not what we're dealing with. And we're not going to talk about Middleborough, and I'm afraid your 3 minutes is up.
Thank you.
But thank you. Anybody on the screen that?
Yes, we have.
Okay, why don't we go to the, Mark, we're going to go to somebody on the screen because we haven't had an opportunity to go there yet.
Okay. The first person on line is Curtis. Curtis, I'm asking you to unmute. Please say your name and address for the record.
Curtis Hoffman, 58 Hilldale Road.
We cannot hear you well, Curtis.
Okay, is this better?
A little bit. Could you
Okay,
get closer to the microphone?
yes. Curtis Hoffman, 58 Hilldale Road in Ashland. I hope that everyone understands that the term 100-year flooding is potentially misleading, especially in the context of climate change. These events are happening more and more frequently, and we may even see 500-year floods as they did in Asheville, North Carolina this last year. So when you engineer that parking lot for 100-year floods, do not expect that it's going to take that long for that to happen. That's all I wanted to say.
Thank you.
We have one more person online.
Okay, well, we took two from here, so why don't we take a second one from there?
All right. John Go Friday, I'm asking you to unmute. Please say your name and address to the record. John, you're unmuted, but we cannot hear you. They're unmuted, but I don't know if they're having maybe a
Okay,
technical
well,
difficulty.
we will go on to Mr. DeSoni, who's been patiently waiting for his opportunity.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Sony, 119 Main Street. And civil is the answers I'm looking for. Does the civil cover the scope of the project? Yes or no?
I'm not sure what you mean by the scope
By
of
the scope is by
project.
the purpose.
It covers the various issues that our peer review engineer has discussed tonight about the basic property and flooding and water issues, things of that nature.
Okay, direct to the chairman, to the engineer, if I can do that.
If we will do our best, Mark.
Okay, thank you. Is your report from front cover to last words just about water concerns?
I'm not sure. What do you mean by water concerns?
The flood, the 100-year floods and the pipe in the raceway and all. Is it only just water that your report concerns of?
He's asking, I think, through me, but I'm not quite sure I can translate the question.
So, Mr. DeSonia, if you heard Mr. Pesnola, it actually dealt with the site layout overall, not just stormwater and flooding, but he talked about snow storage, he talked about trash and recycling, where that's going to be, he talked about parking. So it was a general overall civil review, which included all of those things.
Yeah, most of it was about the water and Sudbury River and the wall and stuff like that. Okay, I'll go from there. Does civil concerns talk about applicability of all buildings and structures?
I'm sorry, I didn't quite hear
Applicability, this is one of the 210 zoning bylaws I'll revert from. How about the erected, non-construction, altered, enlarged, or moved buildings on the premises shall be conformity with the provisions of zoning bylaws. No building structure and land shall be used for any purpose, any manner, other than expressly permitted within the district in which such building structure or land is located, where the application of this bylaw imposes greater restrictions to those imposed by other regulations, permits, restrictions, easements, covenants, or agreements in the provision of the bylaw control. Nothing herein shall be constructed to be supersede the provisions of State Building Code 780 CMR 1 Ec Sec.
Well, again, Mark, this is an application that's been filed under Chapter 40B, which allows the applicant to seek waivers of zoning bylaws that a community has in order to develop the project that the applicant is seeking to develop. And it's up to the board, after we hear all of the evidence and take everything into consideration, to decide whether to grant waivers or to deny the claim outright, or to grant waivers of certain bylaws that Ashland has, which for a single-family house would be applicable, but which isn't applicable for a 40B project such as we have here.
So this is where the state gives them granted powers to surpass or not use our bylaws as a 40B progress.
My understanding, if I understand your question correctly, is yes, this was a statute that the state passed decades ago in order to encourage housing in communities that had zoning that perhaps was deemed to be too restrictive and not allow adequate housing to be built. So it was designed to give the applicant an opportunity to Do we have some stormwater issues in the background there? So it's a, I'll stop there. It's designed to give an opportunity to circumvent existing zoning bylaws to build housing.
Okay, and last part is about special permits. It kind of what the engineer was reading is straight from almost straight from the zoning codes that I would have, because the criteria, special permit shall be granted by special granting authorities unless otherwise specifically herein.
Well, again, the applicant is not seeking a special permit. It's seeking what's called a comprehensive permit under Chapter 40B, which allows him to come before the Zoning Board of Appeals and decide issues that otherwise would be decided by the Conservation Commission for local conservation ordinances, or the Board of Health, or the Planning Board, and I'm sure I'm skipping a few others, but it's like one-stop shopping.
Yep. The last public meeting we had with this, I brought up the priorities and those boards.
We need to wrap it up, Mark. One more question.
One more question. Through his report of all the concerns on the land and everything that's going to be done, it has a list on the criteria, list 1 through 6. Number 1 is community needs served.
Again, Mark, those are criteria for special permits.
Yes.
This is not a special permit.
Okay.
I know you were present for the first
Yes, I
hearing that
was.
we had tonight, which was a special permit,
Yes.
and we did talk about those 6 criteria, but not applicable to this.
So I'll take that and say if it's not applicable. I'm just going to say have our boards in the future, no matter how this goes up and down, yes or no, we can all work together as a town boards, once the comprehensive plan gets finalized, can work together for a stronger policy-making town. Thank you.
Anything online?
Yes. So John Gonfrade, I'm asking you to unmute again. You unmuted, Joan. Unfortunately, we cannot hear you.
You can't hear?
Nope.
Okay, sir, why don't you step up?
Johnson, 4 Roberts Road, Ashland. I just am trying to understand the site and the flooding situation. How many acres is the site? Can I ask you? Or who I
site, I believe, is about a little over 7.
7 acres? And how many, there's like 250 units, so how many residents is that, like 400 or 600 people? Somewhere around there?
However many would,
Okay, so 400 or 500. How many children will be in that area?
well, again, I asked people to limit their questions if they could to the civil engineering aspect that we're
Okay.
talking about tonight.
So in the site then, is there any playground areas? Or is it
There
just?
are, there are
rock?
areas, there are
Okay.
open areas.
And they're in the back or the front? Or
I'm sorry?
where are the playground areas on the
Well, they're on the
site?
site plan, which is on,
Okay,
online and can be viewed if you go to the Ashland Zoning Board of Appeals site, website. You can see a copy
Okay.
of the plan.
thank you.
Thank you, sir. All set?
Yeah, no other comments online.
Okay, good, no further public comment. I was gonna say, I was gonna ask you to come back to the podium. We need to just talk about a few
Yeah.
things.
Before I forget, Mr. Chairman, you read into the record a lot of the comments the town has received. I believe I'm in possession of all of those with the exception of the one that came in today, I guess, from the fire department. So if I could make sure to get a copy of that, because there were comments that we're going to be addressing in the next round
absolutely.
of comments.
I mean, we've asked that everything that comes in
Yep.
from the community about this project comes to the board, but also is distributed to you, so you have an opportunity to review and comment upon it if you feel appropriate.
So I don't know if the chairman needs or wants me to respond to any of the comments we've heard. I mean, I don't think it's necessary per se. So,
I don't at this point. At some point, we'll have a further discussion about it, but
okay.
the comments didn't really address the issues that we've been talking about tonight. They seem to be more focused on
Global
traffic
issues.
and perhaps building design, and those are issues that we are going to get to in the coming meetings. And I keep saying in the coming meetings, but there's a lot to cover, and we need the time to cover it. With respect to meetings, we had talked about your engineers were getting further information back for our peer review engineer, and then the back and forth. Our next meeting is scheduled for 2 weeks from tonight, or April 22nd. Do you feel that's an adequate time for your engineers to get things back to our peer reviewer to give him an opportunity, or do we need to go out?
Here's my perspective, and I defer to the board. I think it might be aggressive to get it to Mr. Piznola and give Mr. Piznola a reasonable amount of time to be prepared to present at the next hearing. My thinking, and I feel confident saying this, is we can bang out traffic at the next hearing. We have a few lingering issues. We will get those addressed. We will get submitted for the record. We will get submitted to Mr. Misha, and I feel confident saying at the next hearing, concurrent to that, I think I talked to Bowler prior, we'll have enough time. Some of the details that Mr. Piznola has asked for is not something that can be done like in a day. We're going to work on those. So I think it's realistic to get it to him in adequate time to give him ample time to do another subsequent thorough review, and both he and Bowler can come prepared 2 hearings from tonight, so presumably in 4 weeks, and hopefully we can come close to closing out civil engineering. If that would be my preference.
So the plan would be to do traffic on April 22nd?
I believe so, yes.
Okay. Does that work all right for the board?
I will not be able to be here on April 22nd.
But you'll be able to, when you come back?
Oh, geez.
Yeah, I'll be able to review when I come back.
Under the Mullins rule? Okay, that would be fine.
Mr. Chairman, I didn't even realize that. I'm not going to be here April 22nd. That's school vacation week, right?
It is.
I mean, can I confer with my team? I mean, it's unorthodox to not have the applicant attend. I would defer to council if that even is.
You can have a
within
representative
a
attend on your
representative?
behalf, right?
Okay. So can we hold that for now, that date, and with the expectation? But I can tell you definitively, I will be 3,000 miles away on April 22nd.
Definitely
So-
should have traffic then.
Yeah. Well, why don't we schedule it, we can continue the meeting to April 22nd.
I feel confident that Bowler and M.G.L,
If-
and Vanas can be here. And if there's lingering issues, obviously the public hearing is not closing. So if there's decisions or outstanding items, I'll be back in due course. So let's keep the 22nd.
Okay, that's fine. And one final thing, I've raised the question a couple of times earlier on, but what's the status of your application with the Conservation Commission to get that going? Because the longer that's delayed, the longer your project's going to be delayed if we approve it. So what
Sure.
what can we deal with? We've heard a lot of talk about floodwaters and floodplains and everything tonight, so it seems like we're getting to the point where
Right, but
there should be an application before the Concom.
your
so
point's
they
well
can do their
taken,
work.
but we're not there yet, Mr. Chairman. I mean, there's still some things that are moving relative to our plan. So we do not want to submit a notice of intent to the conservation and then have something change before this board that would then make us go and change that. In my experience, it's very customary to wait until you have a usable comprehensive permit before you file a notice of intent with conservation. Now, if we're comfortable that we've satisfied Hancock Associates and we're through all the technical issues, we can, we have no reason to, we're not trying to delay, but I don't want to be inefficient and submit a notice of intent that we're going to have to modify because there's still design things going on relative to their purview. So, I mean, could we submit it before we're closed? We can. I mean, my preference honestly would be, to wait. For instance, and I don't think this will happen and I don't want to digress, but let's just say we were not able to come to an amicable permit or there was an appeal. We're handling that for longer than I would care to admit. So why are we before the Conservation Commission on a notice of intent on a project that we can't even build because we don't have a usable permit? So this isn't my first rodeo. I have every expectation to do that as quickly as we can. I'm just saying I think it would be a little premature to file that in the next 60 days.
Okay, well, obviously, we can't force you to file it, so I respect your decision and proceed as you feel you need to. Okay. Well, if there's nothing further on this issue, this matter, then I think a motion to continue to the hearing. Oh, Brian is already reaching for his phone.
So moved.
Okay, we're going to continue it to April 22nd. Now, we already have the other 40B project at 61 Waverly scheduled for that evening. So do we want to schedule this for, I think we scheduled them for 7 o'clock. We want to schedule this for later or schedule it for 7:05 and have them
Yeah, I would
wait?
schedule it for 7:05 and then that way you're not stuck at if that
It
is
falls
fast, then you
apart.
don't have to wait, right?
Okay, sounds good. So a motion to continue the hearing to April 22nd at 7:05 PM.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second the motion.
Aye, John Trefethan, vote in favor.
Aye, Brian Forrest, all vote in favor.
I, Dan May, vote in favor.
I, Ryan Sullivan, vote in favor.
I, Stuart Siegel, vote in favor.
Thank you. The matter is then continued. Thank you very much. Okay, we have a couple of other items remaining on our agenda. And I'm looking for the agenda. Here it is. Next was approval of the meeting minutes for our March 25th, 2025 meeting.
I move we table this item.
I would agree with that because the minutes were sent out very late in the afternoon. They came out very late. And there was an email from Alvaro that contained two public comment emails plus the minutes, but they came out
Like 5 p.m.
5 p.m.
Yeah.
I was stuck in traffic at that point.
There you go. So, okay, we're going to continue that until April 22nd. Staff updates and administrative matters. Obviously, we are without our former town planner, Peter Matchek, who was moved on. So we have Alvaro now, who we had before. So Peter has abandoned us. Now, administrative matters. We had talked via email about adding an extra hearing on April 15th. My understanding is that's not going to happen now?
Yes, so I wanted to update that on the board. Thank you so much for responding so timely about it. There was just a delay with the butters list of the applicant that I got in, and that wouldn't have given me the 14 days that I need to send a butter notice. So before running into any issues, I will rather just figure out like maybe a new date. I know there's an extra Tuesday in April after our April 22nd meeting, and then the first Tuesday on May, in the case that we would like to work on scheduling an extra meeting for that. Since then, we received the special permit that I was talking about for 167, 169 Pleasant, and also a variance for 17 Central. So if we were to schedule it for the first meeting in May, I will have enough time to, do the logistics of both of those cases and then have them in front of the board.
So you're suggesting we have a meeting the first Tuesday in May,
Yes,
which would be May
6th,
6th?
right before town meeting.
That fine with people?
I'm flexible, so I defer to you guys.
That works for me.
Stu, that fine for you?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Works for me as well.
Then why don't we do that? Why don't we schedule an extra meeting for May 6th? That will give Alvaro time to get the publications out, notices out for those two, and we'll have two special permits on for that.
One special
one
permit
special
variance.
on for that date. Excellent. Okay. Anything else that we need to address in that subject matter?
Not in that subject, but just kind of like updating on the board. We're working on with 61 Waverly Street. Both of the peer reviews have been advised to continue its work, so they are looking at that. Once we get on a specific topic that we will be looking at the meeting, of course, I will talk with John, but just kind of figure out what will be the first topic. We have not received any peer review report yet for 61 Waverly, so we're just in kind of like that whole period to decide fully what will be the first topic to look into. And then farther this week, we will be having a meeting with MDM, to just kind of like continue on the traffic. They requested to meet with both the fire department, police department, and DPW, so they can receive further comments from the latest report.
This
They will
is
present
on-
in 10 to 60 Main Street, sorry.
So
So
1060 Main Street?
going back to 10 to 60 Main Street,
Okay.
yes. Yeah,
Okay,
I
good.
think that's it.
John, I just wanted to clarify on the meeting minutes that we still need to vote on that came in this afternoon. I don't recall who was present, but are we going to have a quorum with me not being there to adopt those minutes?
Yes. there
Yes,
will
we
be
would have it.
John, Dan, and Stu.
I was there, Dan was here, and Stu was there.
Great.
So that's a quorum.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's all the
And
updates.
a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Quickest finger in the east. Is there a second?
Second the motion?
All in favor? Aye, John Featherum in favor.
Aye, Brian Forrest, all in favor?
Aye, Dan May, in favor?
I, Ryan Sullivan, am in favor.
I, Stuart Siegel, am in favor.
Thank you very much. Thank you, WACA.